Welcome to the Directive, the official podcast of the Eden Directive Star Citizen Group. Today, we'll be talking about the new Around the Verse shows and the last two 10 for the Chairman episodes. My name is Arctos, and with me, I have Supernewt.
Good day to you, sir.
Did you happen to catch the verse?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the first one. What did you think?
I cried a little. It was just bad. I'm sorry, but everything just seemed very, very awkward. It was so condescending, and I just felt like, oof, I don't know. It was so cheesy, but not in a good way. I mean, I had a bit of an issue with the way that Wingman's hangar became endearing after a while, but this one, no.
It was a bit awkward. For example, the first thing I noticed was Sandy Gardner looks like she's about to leap off the couch at any moment.
It's a good thing they had separate chairs, because I don't think there'd have been much room on the... I mean, I shouldn't be mean to him, because I'm not exactly the smallest guy in the world, but...
On the first episode, they were sitting on the same couch.
Oh, yes, they were. I was just scared that she was going to fall off and continuing to nudge her off or something.
It didn't look like an even setting there. The other thing I want to ask you, did you catch Ben's necklace?
I have. I mean, I've seen it a few times. He's been in a couple of videos. He tends to wear it a lot, and it must be some sort of reference. I keep on thinking it looks a lot like that Stargate ship, their most recent one. Was it Destiny or something like that? Like, it's the old ancient ship.
It's actually from the Wing Commander movie. It's a pilgrim necklace.
I'm not a Chris Roberts fan. I'm not a Wing Commander fan, but if it's a reference to that, then something tells me I'm going to have to watch it now.
I liked it. So the pilgrims were actually a part of the Wing universe that was added for the movie. And they're sort of like space-faring humans that are more tuned to space and can navigate a little bit better. Sort of like the perfect hotshot pilot. They all wear that, at least some of them have those necklaces to identify who they are. I thought that was kind of neat. So Ben's sort of wearing his sort of Wing Commander pride out for everyone to see. I noticed that he's really sort of happy and excited and did most of the talking, which was one of the other awkward parts for me.
Yes, it seemed like Sandy was rather just let her be there. And I felt like Ben had all the actual content and she was just there to comment and make. Sometimes I just felt like there was a definite imbalance there.
And I think that's a shame because she seems like the more cultured media personality of the team.
Yeah, something tells me she's definitely got the better qualifications to be doing something like that.
One of the other things at a high level for the show is I don't feel like I'm seeing much in the creative process, which is really what fascinates me. How did you...
Yeah, I mean, they tried it with that, with the... Oh, I can't remember his name now. When they did the interview, and they tried to get a bit, Travis Day. They tried to speak to him more, but it was more of a. I appreciate the general chit chat. You want to know the developers, but after that, I just felt like it was just again words. They weren't really giving us any solid information or anything about what they might be doing or how the creative process goes. They're just saying this is what I do.
Although there was one question that they threw at Travis Day that really kind of excited me. They asked him what feature he was most looking forward to. And what he said was boarding or sort of FPS. And he described this sort of opening scene from Star Wars Episode 4 where they're cutting through the door and the stormtroopers pour out and there's a big laser. That would be amazing.
I think everyone's kind of dream would be to sit there and to depend on which side you want to be. I want to be Darth Vader walking on after and just strolling on and everyone like saluting me as we walk past. Now that's what I need to be.
Do you know every one of those Imperials had a British accent? Because
we play the best villains.
They shot it in the UK as well.
They're shooting the new one in the UK as well. I'm surprised we're not going to get sued for loads of money because Harrison Ford decided to break his foot, hasn't he?
Doing his own stunts. At least he's getting affordable healthcare.
Yes, well, yeah, definitely.
There were some other parts of the show. I noticed that they covered essentially like the most valuable player. They did a sort of customer support segment. I like that they answered some common questions and gave players pointers, but then they sort of like pointed out like here's an outstanding player that did something amazing like posting a series of tips and tricks. Then they didn't really direct players to that. They mentioned Leon 300's tips and tricks on an Arena Commander, but they didn't provide the URL. And I thought then they did the interview with Disco Lando.
Who the hell is Disco Lando? Just can someone tell me this, please? I mean, I understand apparently he did some Wingman's hangar stuff, but unless he's the real Lando and he's generally dancing around in disco style, I'm not interested in him. I'm sorry, I'm just not. He's not an interesting person to me. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I'm not going to have a go at him for his personality. He seemed great, but I was just like.
So I've got to hang out all my hang-ups. Because of this Wookiee, I feel so hell-bent. Hey, hey!
to me. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I'm not going to have a go at him for his personality. He seemed great, but I was just like...
To agree. I did check out some of his shows, though. They are really well done. But right, he's just sort of a fan. Though he has some interesting views, I really am more interested in what they're doing with the game.
I'm sure I've learned everything about him from just looking him up on the forums, not taking part of subscriber money. Let's be honest. Obviously, it's not a lot. I can't imagine they pay him for it, but they're still putting that into the subscriber payments for this game and for the stuff and for the community stuff. And they just got this random person who I have no care about in the world. I will be really honest with that. I know it sounds horrible. I'm not meaning to be a horrible person about it, but and I'm just like, yeah, great. He's a person. Why is he here?
What did you like about First Around the Verse?
I mean, I'm struggling to say too much nice about. I mean, I was very happy with the information, the bits of information they gave me. That wasn't too bad. They released that they told you about how you get the freelancer MIS model for subscribers as Flair. So I was pretty excited for that. So I always like those kind of things. And they gave us a bit more of an information about how the dogfight module is going to be coming out, in the sense of they're going to be releasing single-seater ships first, and then they're going to go for the variants, because they said if you jump out of your seat at the moment, then you'll just be crushed by the weight of the inertia of the vehicle that you're in.
Move on to the second Around the Verse. When I watched the second one, it seemed improved to me.
Definitely. The first things I saw as soon as I saw it was I was very impressed with. It didn't look so tacked on. It didn't look so... I mean, it still wasn't great, but it was much improved.
I noticed they're both no longer on the couch in the second one.
No, they get their own chairs. and it looks a bit nicer as well. I like the background more. The backboard, I just wasn't that impressed about.
For me, I thought it was pretty good. I like the little bits, the sort of trimmed down Tony Zurevec interview. I think they hit the highlights, and that was kind of nice.
Yeah, you watched that whole interview, didn't you? I only watched the highlights, and I was happy with that.
Well, I think if you're like a big fan of Origin and you sort of followed all these people in the games, like I really did like the Ultimate games as well as the Wing Commander games. Origin at the time was really pushing the envelope, and I think Tony Zurevec is a brilliant programmer, game designer, producer, and they really did have a talented team on both sides, both the Wing Commander individuals and the Ultima teams, and really just seeing them sort of like keep that tradition up of pushing the envelope for the PC just really warms my heart. I am deep down a PC gamer.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
In addition, they did some like interviews. I think he's from CS, James, did an interview, I think, with the fire chief. How did you find that?
Oh yes, another community member. Yeah, I liked him more than Disco Lando, just because at least this guy's not pretending to be Lando, because I was a bit disappointed when I was like, Lando's going to be doing dancing. This is cool. But he seemed like a nice guy. It was not very Star Citizen informative, but you know.
I'm an older gamer. It was nice to see someone older than me who was definitely into games. I found it kind of funny. He bought himself a Constellation, then he bought his coworker an Aurora.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between those ships, isn't there, slightly? Oh, they're both RSI.
I just don't think I could buy a coworker an Aurora. I think I'd have to get them a Hornet or a 300.
I was going to say the 300i.
Yeah, if someone's going to be escorting me, I want them to have a good ship. That was kind of interesting. And then basically they sort of wrapped up, if I recall, with a sort of programmer bug.
I'm not a programmer. I mean, it's brilliant. I'm sure for anyone who was a programmer, that was really exciting. But they said something along the lines of that the audio stopped, but they weren't playing the audio, so I didn't know it stopped. For me, it was working fine. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's brilliant. And then he showed me this text that was running around. And I was like, okay, yeah, there's a number going up, and apparently that means something. And I just felt like he was just like saying, "Ha, you peasant that don't know how to program, learn to program, noob."
I am a programmer. For me, it was somewhat interesting, but you're right. They didn't do a good job of showing when the damage model changed that the animation stopped and the sound stopped. And it was due to not resetting the state when something changed. They reinitialized everything to incorrect values. But when they show the code, they blurred it all out. I don't think you should be...
So the only which would have appealed to the programmers, which that area was like supposed to appeal to, was blurred out.
Yeah, which I'm assuming was due to probably intellectual property concerns, but don't show the code.
That's like censoring out porn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You just don't do that. You can imagine logging on to like RedTube or something like that, and then there's no porn
yeah.
censored.
All
It's
the
just
all
these
the
big black bars over the bits which people want to watch.
exactly right.
You only get just the bits beforehand where they talk about the delivery boy, and you just see the delivery boy come there, and that's all that you get. It's like, oh, that's
and then
brilliant.
and then they're eating a pizza.
I'm really pleased at the fact that they're able to crush the bugs, and they do find them fairly easy. And it seemed like they've got good tools for that. So
Mhm.
it gives me a lot more confidence in the game.
For Around the Verse, what would you like to see more of? How do you feel it's progressing?
I'd like to see again a bit more progression on the editing side. That was it's going the right way. Just the content needs to improve a bit more. It just seems very lacking at the moment. It
Yeah,
really
like
does. Some of the stuff's interesting. I liked how they referenced again the community segment was quite good. How they got the two community managers and they just said they gave a little update on the tickets and they're just saying
Right.
looking a little bit longer at the moment. That's great. I mean, I'm not one to troll all the dev forums and the dev posts. So for me, that's perfect. That gives me all the information I need without me having to troll everywhere. So that was really good.
What would you like to see more of?
Well, they announced the Xi'an Scout, so that was quite cool. So I'd like to see more announcements of ships. That's always good. Anything pretty, lots of pretty ships. That's what I want to see.
I think it'd be great to see more of the concept art, maybe.
Not the stick drawing.
That's right. They had the one concept artist, and then they had sort of him doing a sort of rough of a concept sketch that was just lines. Yeah, that wasn't too compelling.
Yeah, I'd
But
love them to have shown something that he was working on, saying this is my. He's not spoiling to say that there's going to be stuff down in Terra or on Earth or something. So this is my concept sketch of what the landing pad's going to look like. That would have been something which I think because you're going to see it a lot, that would be a lot more interesting. But something about a concept ship which likely won't ever get into production.
I'd like to see more sort of glimpses into the design process, like maybe hear the designers talk.
That would be brilliant. I often hear, for example, with Tem for the chairman, he's always saying, "Oh, well, we haven't fully decided on that." I would love to see them just make a decision about something, and just see, even if it's just an informal chat. I'd love to see them all sat round a table and them just having a little informal chat about what they're going to do next.
That would be excellent. I think it would really give us the sort of context of the issues that they're grappling with as they're trying to make these decisions that seem otherwise simple to us.
And I also would have liked to have seen them perhaps report on. Obviously, last week they were in the UK doing the Squadron 42 summit. It would have been nice to see them do a little bit about that. I mean, they obviously wouldn't have had to have done much, but just like a little video of this is our visit to the UK. This is what kind of ideas that we've got going on. These are our plans for it. That'd be really nice. That would have been fun. Just show us the UK office a bit as well, because we don't really get to see that. We see Santa Monica and Austin, and occasionally they show you the one room where they do all the presents from the UK office, but that's about it.
It would be nice to see more, especially with the process of design. I'd love to see, like you said, the conversations. But then we had also 2 recent 10 for the chairmans. I remember like one last week, if I recall, they opened up with talking about the hull breaches. Would you be able to like sort of a hole into a ship and then just go through it and board?
Yeah, no. In short, he said it's just impossible to. He says it would be impossible to do that fully, just because of the way that they would have to model the inside of the holes and things like that. They said it's pretty much impossible. There's going to be designated points where you can breach. Basically, is what they were saying.
Right, which makes sense to me. And I guess for a lot of people who don't have a programming background, maybe it is good to throw that question in there. Then the next question, I believe, was, could you fly into a star? I'm wondering,
I mean, it's a question it must have passed my mind on occasion, because I did find it like a question worth asking to a certain extent.
Okay.
But I realise it's not one of those burning questions which I was really looking forward to finding out. But it turns out, no, you cannot fly into a star. You'll blow up beforehand. But it's nice to see that
you can at least try.
Yeah, you can try, and eventually you'll blow up because you get too close. Though he did mention about how, I mean, another part to that question was asking, do like solar flares and solar activity affect the system? And he originally said no, but it said it would be something that would be cool and would be something that would be nice to have in there. So I like the fact that at least he's willing to accept ideas, even if they aren't particularly viable at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I could see how solar flares might affect communication and maybe scanners. Be very interesting.
Yeah, imagine if it's knocking out like satellites or something like that. That could be very interesting.
Then I remember there was one. This next question just seemed kind of crazy to me. Would there be any tools to reduce purchase risk. The person was sort of wanting a tool that could tell them how optimally be able to turn with a certain loadout engine and various gear. And it didn't seem very practical to me.
They want everything like in front of them to say, right, okay, this is exactly what it's going to do. And they almost want there to be a simulation within the simulation for the simulation.
I agree. And I think I was really glad this is one of the few times Chris said, no.
And he's like, no, just buy it, play it, and then deal with it if it doesn't work. Stop being a retard.
I think he said it a little nicer.
Yeah, he did.
I think it was depend on the community, which I thought was entirely fair.
I'm sure there's going to be someone who will min-max the layouts of every ship out there to say this is the best min-max layout for damage output.
And that's what I want. I want the people at Cloud Imperium to be focusing on building the game and let the gamers figure out how to optimize.
Yeah.
And then I remember, the next question was about, which interests me a little more, was about banking. Essentially, what happens if loans aren't paid? And I think Chris was talking about auto deduction, which essentially seemed to preclude loan sharks or bounty hunters coming after you if you're not making your money or paying back.
What I found quite interesting about that is the idea of banking and that deduction also gives us an idea as how perhaps the tax rates are going to work and the way that tax works, because if they've got, say, an auto deduction for paying back your loan, then they're likely going to have a similar way for taxes, and that could also work for organisation taxes as well. So for the Eden Directive, we've said that we're going to have a tax rate of some sorts. That's definitely, we've got that option there, and it's likely that it's not going to be something where we're having to and chase up people about their taxes. It's going to be something it will automatically be dealt with, so it helps everyone in the organisation.
It sounds like there's going to be other deductions as well, like your hangar, fuel. These are all sort of like things you're going to have to pay for regularly.
As an early backer, you do get the hangar fees paid for at least.
And the LTI.
Yes, well, we are the elite, aren't we?
The next question really kind of made me cry a little bit, because I feel like some of these questions are wasted opportunities. If you recall, I believe the next one was like, are cyborg limbs repairable?
Yeah, that was a facepalm moment for me. I was like, really?
It's just like, no, you are stuck with a broken cyborg arm. I think the answer was yes.
It's a little bit too much of a. I like the fact that okay, he said you'd have to go to a different place than you would to get a physical injury fixed. So I thought, okay, yeah, that's nice. At least they're thinking about that. They're not just saying, oh yes, a doctor can do everything for you. But at the same time, it was a little bit too much. I didn't need that information.
I mean, they must be getting an overwhelming number of questions, and some of them just seem very disappointing. It makes me wonder, are the others even worse?
I often wonder whether or not they even read them beforehand, or whether they just do like an eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
I think you might be right. Sometimes Chris Roberts has gotten a question and said, I think I've answered this before. And you're like, oh. As soon as you hear that, it's like, oh, I know this is going to be bad. Actually, there was one in here, I think, later. But I think the next one was questing for pirates. Would there be auto-generation like in the PU for pirate adventures? And I thought that
basically the answer just said yes.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of a given. I mean, essentially, if you're going to generate quests for explorers, you're going to generate quests for bounty hunters and probably people who like to race. So that just seemed like a given to me too.
Yeah, I think the questing, or from what they've told us so far, is very much so automated, and it's not just a UEE mission system. It's a full mission system. All depends on your ratings with people. It has all sorts of different features which will give you lots of different missions, and also depends on where you are in the universe as well. So it's a given that we're going to have lots of, no matter what you want to do, there's going to be missions available for you.
The answer to that kind of obvious. For one, the fact that all the org pages have sort of clear defined roles. For example, the Eden is exploration and resources, and others have piracy. Could you imagine if you're generating content for one role and not another? I can't.
I think you'd get some pretty angry people.
The next question, I believe, was a repeat, if I recall. Essentially, people asked what games had influenced Chris Roberts. Demon Souls, because it was hard. Battlefield for the co-op, which I'm like, yes. StarCraft 2 for the sort of rock, paper, scissors aspect, which I always enjoyed. And then Uncharted and Last of Us for the details.
Yeah, those were... I picked up that, and I actually thought it was quite interesting myself, but I thought definitely some of the options that he gave the examples were pretty useful. I mean, definitely Demon Souls. No, I'm not a Demon Souls, Dark Souls player at all, but I know of the games quite well, and I realized that one of the big things about it is, yes, it's hard, but it's also very rewarding when you do something right and it goes well. So if you plan and you know your game, then you'll do well, and it'll make it worthwhile. It gives you a lot more reward for it. come from that Eve mentality of a game needs to be at least challenging somewhat,
Mm.
give you that worthwhileness of it, yeah, to make it rewarding enough for you.
Well, I think another thing he mentioned that goes along with your comment with Eve is he said that there was a lot of risk that went all hand in hand with the reward. And I think Eve has that too, where you can risk a lot by going into, say, a low-sec space.
Yes, but then it's rewarded a lot more with the results and the things that you can get. It's all about balancing, and I think that's quite nice because it allows people to, if they don't want to take that risk, they don't have to. It's there for them, but then they can't expect to be the best or get the best rewards. You could do one mission in a really dangerous place or 10 missions in a really safe place. I say that's a fair give.
I think I would always opt for the 10 safer missions. I am.
Me too, but that's my gameplay style. But I
Yeah.
understand if those people want to take that risk, then go for it.
Yeah, I imagine that there's going to have to be different risk profiles, different wards, and there's different people who gravitate towards each risk profile. The other one he said was Uncharted and Last of Us, which I did not play, but everyone was raving about for the detail, both in the story, the characters, and the world. And I have to say, just walking around the hangar and you see all the detail with the new textures from the last patch, the sort of bump mappings, the modeling detail, I have to say I can really see the level of detail that Chris is talking about.
Yes, there's surely a point where you can see that he's got that down. He definitely prioritizes those small details. Sometimes I would much prefer a small game with plenty of detail, and it shows that they've put that time into it, than a huge game which doesn't really pay attention to those bits, which you end up finding really enjoyable to see each panel modeled properly, and that's what they're intending to do from to my knowledge.
Let's see, a few more questions. I think the next one was, can players be classed as terrorists if they're engaging in sort of pirate activity and be attacked on site by the UEE? And I believe the answer was just a very succinct yes.
Yeah. Again, that we've had the knowledge that there's a reputation system going, and they will shoot you on sight if you become a criminal. I don't think the idea of a terrorist, perhaps, unless you are purposefully targeting UEE systems, but I think more a criminal is more likely what you're going to be. Terrorism involves you attacking the state a lot more, which I'm sure you do, but I'm sure you would lose very, very quickly. A lot of the thing about this that I'm noticing, which I'm pleased about, is it's not all about the players. Players are only going to make up a percentage of the game, and the rest is going to be a very strong coalition of planets, which I think is much more sensible.
The next question was almost incoherent. Basically, the player asked, the solar system has how many planets? And I think there was do we mean this solar system? Are you concerned about Pluto being a planet or other solar systems? And I think
it's not a planet, people. Get over it.
I found this kind of another wasted opportunity in question. I believe the answer was we're going to model it with the correct amount of detail for this solar system, and then other ones are just going to vary and be interesting.
Yeah, they did mention about scaling it down again, though, because it would just take you too long. I mean, if you wanted to really go to Pluto, even with the sublight speeds that they're talking about, it would take you too long to make it a sensible thing to
I think I once recall an analogy of the solar system. If you scaled the solar system to a U.S. football field, essentially the sun would be a BB on the center point of the field, where Pluto's orbit would be at the exact ends in the end zones. And if you think about that, that's a lot of empty space.
That is a lot of empty space.
So I'm thinking scaling it down is probably a good call. So then we had
I think you're still going to be impressed with the scale, though, regardless.
Oh, yeah, but I think it's like a play. You don't want to simulate reality to have all the tedium of empty space. Play, you don't see people going to the bathroom because it's not interesting. We want to get to the good bits as quick as possible.
Yeah, it'd be like watching 24 and watching him eat, then go to the bathroom all the time. Yeah, I understand that it's obviously supposed to be, each episode's supposed to be the hour, but I'm okay if they cut 15 minutes of literally shit out of it. That's fine by me.
That's an excellent analogy. And then we had some more questions on this week's episode. I think he spent a lot of time talking about the flight model first. And he got some gifts like he often does. And I thought one of the gifts was licorice. And I had to wonder who sends licorice as a gift.
It's a bit of a bizarre one, isn't it? I can think of so many more interesting gifts to send, but oh well. Here's a nasty tasting sweet for you.
Exactly. And then he spent, I think it was about 15 minutes talking about the flight model. I think he summarized the problem really well early on in the first sentence, where essentially the flight model is so accurate, most people are sort of complaining that believe it's inaccurate or incorrect.
Yeah, which is, I think that's kind of as terrible as it is, it's also brilliant because it's just so fantastic that they're making something so good that people find it bad.
And it seems to be the big change because Wing Commander and every other flight sim had the atmospheric flight model, which essentially has a concept of drag. And when you stop like pushing forward on the ailerons, things just sort of converge the way people would expect. But in this game, what happens is you're applying thrust, and then when you stop moving your HOTAS, mouse, gamepad, then it has to apply thrust in the reverse direction to stabilize or stop that inertial motion. And I think a lot of people are just overshooting because they're not used to that. I found that I
I'm
got used
having
to
that
it.
trouble now.
Oh,
I mean, that's definitely something which I'm pleased that he went through that because that is definitely something which I'm having problems with my HOTAS. But I do still feel that it is a little difficult to use. I've tried turning down, at least if they gave you some options for sensitivity, that might help. The idea of having to stop before you necessarily reach the target is quite unintuitive sometimes for someone who's been playing games all his life, but normally you stop when you're actually on the target. You play any
right.
shooter out there, that's exactly what you do. So the idea of stopping before you actually reach it can be quite difficult. So I can understand that, especially those using that HOTAS, I feel like they could be a bit more, as well as I've also seen gameplay videos of people using the mouse and keyboard, and it just looks a hell of a lot easier.
I use the mouse and keyboard as well as the gamepad. It's easier in sort of converging to the target, but it's a little hard to steer and aim with the same device. I'm hoping there'll be some future device where we can separate those two functions. I find I adapted pretty quick. I've yet to complete all 15 waves, but gotten up to the 13th wave.
I'm proud to say that I've got up to wave 9 with my HOTAS. And I think for me, that's a really good achievement because I used to find it very, very difficult. And that was before I never ejected. Even though I knew that you could and you could like get a life back, I never did that. So technically, I want to say that I got up to level 9 on my own with the HOTAS, and I think that's good.
That's excellent. I have to say that I ejected to get to level 13, so if I did the same, I probably wouldn't have gotten past 9.
It really does, doesn't it?
One of the statements that Chris sort of ended up the whole flight model discussion with is he believes that there's still work to be done on the sort of control scheme, and I took that as a good sign.
Well, it's never 100%. There's always going to be. I mean, he wanted it to be design agnostic, was it, or something like that? So it doesn't matter what you use. It should be control. All controllers should work fairly well regardless, but I do feel like there's definitely got a lot of work to be done with them, and balancing is going to take a while, and it will take a lot of their resources as well. This is one of the reasons that I think a lot of games avoid the PC compatibility, like crossplay, because of the difference between a mouse and keyboard in a first person shooter versus a controller. There's no argument towards it. The mouse and keyboard is 9 times out of 10 going to win.
Yeah, I think this is a place where the iterative sort of releases through the modules are really going to benefit the game.
Yeah, because they can get instant feedback about the bits that they've changed rather than throwing the entire thing in there and going, okay, what's gone right, what's gone wrong. At least now they can get some iterative kind of feedback towards the little bits that they make, the little changes that they make for it, and they might have to undo some of the stuff that they've done, but at least it's much easier to do that when you've only just implemented it than when it's 12 months down the line and you did that and then you've released a half full game and now people are realizing that these bits are a problem.
The questions I think were a mixed bag in the most recent 10 for the chairman. I think there were again a number of missed opportunities, sort of questions that had obvious answers. The first one was, are you able to scale the output for the thrusters? And we've already seen this sort of ability with the shields, and most of the thrust models implicit with the sort of coupled. And then you can go to the Newtonian mode, which gives you complete control. You're sort of decoupled. The answer was yes. I guess there's not really much to say about that.
No, not at all. He's already said that these kind of things are going to be interchangeable. You're going to be able to change your power output to each individual thruster, each thing. So it was a wasted question.
The next, in Squadron 42, is there going to be any player and player interactions? Like if you could go to a bar, could you swap stories or whatnot? Yeah, I believe the answer was no for Squadron 42, but yes, definitely yes for the PU. Yeah. And I think that's consistent with what they've been saying all along.
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around why people really want the co-op play in a single player game, considering they're offering the persistent universe out to you. I mean, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, me too. All that has already been stated clearly that's going to be in the PU. It's almost questionable, do you really need Squadron 42 in a game with this scope?
I personally think yes, because I think a lot of people are coming from the freelancer background so I feel like a lot of people still want that, and I'm a huge single player gamer. I much more prefer them because I'll be honest, people are dickheads in the nicest way of saying it. People can really ruin your game, so I want to at least play against the AI and go through a great story, and I think story actually is something which isn't very well done in a multiplayer setting.
And then the next question was, someone was implying that why are you not doing track IR as quickly as you're doing Oculus Rift?
I want something, therefore I am right, therefore you should give it me now.
Right, and I believe Chris's answer was essentially they had some really passionate people who just sort of did that work, and they're on target with the track IR, but there was nothing really wrong. And I think the reason that the Oculus was prioritized just due to the people. Again,
Which I think is great.
Yeah, I think that's a natural thing. I think you see that in a lot of game development. If someone's got a key interest on a team, they'll do the extra effort, and then it gets in there. But again, I thought a wasted question. The Galacticopedia, I think, was the next one. I believe someone was curious about when would it be out. And I remember Chris said there was no date, but there was some cool stuff coming on the website. Do you know anything about that?
Not too much. I mean, I'm pleased that they're now. Thank God the dogfight module's out because I was getting bored with looking at the same screen over and over again. So I'm quite pleased they're going to start focusing a little bit more on RSI on the website itself. But no, I don't really know too much about what they're doing. I'm looking forward to the Galactopedia. I really am. It's effectively the Wikipedia for Star Citizen.
Yep.
I really do want to see that because that's the kind of thing which I can spend hours and hours going through. A lot of it sounds like a lot of the problem they're going to have though is the fact that they still haven't nailed down half of their decisions anyway. I think they're still waiting on certain things to be done before they can say, right, okay, this is definitely what we're going to do. Same with how Eden Directive is saying that we can't set this in stone because when it comes to the persistent universe, might have to change it completely. So I think they're still having that balance problem as well. But I would like to see them put more effort into it, definitely.
Yeah, it would be nice to at least get the lore background. I mean, there may be no economy to discuss of, but I'd like to know the sort of setting. They've shown us renderings of the architecture of different worlds or eras, and it'd just be nice to sort of get that flavor and idea.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's like the star map. That should be something which is very basic and should at least have an idea. Even if they put a big red sign over it saying this is likely to change, I would still like to see that. That would definitely something nice to look at.
Well, we do have the 2D star map, and don't you have a star map as part of your flair for being a subscriber?
It's still not in the it's still not actually in the game though. So it's in plan, but you know.
I believe the next question was, are covert actions possible? For example, could you stealthily sneak aboard someone's Idris or carrier and then sort of sabotage it? And I was
going to say I loved the idea. It sounded hilarious jumping into it's a bit like it reminded me of episode 3 of Star Wars where I think it was Obi-Wan jumped into hid himself in the ship as Amidala, whatever her name is, Padme, went to go find Darth Vader, dickhead, Hayden Christensen, that knobend. Oh, he was such an idiot through that. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to say now, he is a terrible actor. Rant over, but yeah. I quite like the idea of being able to hide aboard someone's ship. I just feel like it's a little bit too much. I don't think a trader really wants to spend all that time. You just want to load stuff onto your ship. You need to make that too much of a game.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd have to have these security protocols where you're securing areas, securing holds, doing a sweep of the ship before you take off. Would that really be fun? So that leads to a more interesting and practical question is like, how are they handling alts? And there's been no talk about that so far.
No, the only brief talk that they gave a snippet when they said that alts are going to be limited, and the more game keys that you have, the more physical alts that you're going to be allowed or something.
Got it.
For example, I've technically got 2 packages. Yeah, I've got 2 accounts almost. They're on the same account, but I've got 2 different packages which both have game access. So they're saying that you could use one of those to create a permanent AI character to use like on your ship.
So I see.
Where you can create another alt with it.
Got it. Where I got one package with my constellation, but then bought a few ships which were not packages. So I have then one account, or you have two. So then the details or some stuff that talked about the control schemes again. I think he sort of like revisited again the sort of idea that some people like mice, keyboards, others like game pads and HOTAS. And he generally said that this is still a work in progress.
He pretty much asked the question which that 15-minute start was about. So he answered it very, very well, and just saying, look, I've already said it, but yeah, it's going to be, we're still working on it. So anything that I say now could likely change.
The next one, monsters in the galaxy. So you might come across a ship or a derelict, but have something lurking in it.
Yeah, I mean, he has actually mentioned about that previously, and that's something that's really, really exciting. Previously, he said the biggest limit for it is animation and time that it takes. It does take a long time, obviously, to do that.
The next question I didn't feel was that interesting, but it was like how long to swap out parts of a ship. And I believe the answer was for small things like weapons, near instantaneous, but big things like, say, an engine, maybe a game day. And typically, most of these games, a game day is like measured in minutes.
I'm pleased about that personally. I am. I think that there needs to be at least some time in between. There has to be some sort of reality to you jumping in. You can't just quite literally change an entire engine in a few seconds and then jump out again. I understand that obviously it's not necessarily a fun part to have to wait, but at the same time, you still needs to be some part of you saying, right, okay, well, if it's going to be a game day is 20 minutes. This gives me a chance to do the other bits that I've been needing to do. So I find that's nice, and it adds that little bit more weight to an upgrade. It's not just an upgrade. It's time that you've put into making sure that upgrade's done.
The next question was essentially, can we customize the ship AI with our own voices? And I think his is interesting. He basically said no, but there'd be voice packs. But I'm almost certain that someone is going to hack that to allow you to add your own voice packs.
I talked about this before. I would love to do this. I think this would be so much fun.
I think most people would want your voice.
I just want to start swearing at people, just saying, you idiot, you've gone to the wrong thing.
I think a lot of people would. Typically, swapping out voices as a game mod is one of the easiest things to do. If Chris goes down the path that they were just going to do voice packs and sell those, I'm sure that the modders will figure out a way around that to add their own.
I mean, that would be a nice thing to put on there, like when the game comes out and they sell those kind of things for a small amount, like a microtransaction. I think that's fair because it changes nothing about the game, but it just adds your own personal touch to it. So I think that's quite nice.
How do you feel about how the 10 for the Chairman's coming along? It's one of my favorite segments, even though a lot of the questions don't really hit the mark for me.
I love Mondays. Mondays are so exciting when it comes to Star Citizen because that's 10 for the Chairman. That's where I feel like I'm always getting some news and the first kind of information that anyone's getting there. It frustrates me when I hear so many stupid questions, but I still love it.
I feel like you're getting a sort of perspective into the design process, but it's only Chris Roberts' view, but that's still very significant.
Definitely.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to let us know what you think about the show, please send email to directive@edendirect.org. See you soon.